What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Ran When Parked. I want to start today's episode off with a very simple fact, and that is that nothing bad has ever happened when mankind has put an American V8 inside of a British supercar, or any British car, really. Case in point, Shelby Cobra, Ford GT, Sunbeam Tiger, what's another one? Jensen Interceptor, Di Tommaso Pantera. That's actually Italian. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's Italian. That's an Italian car with like a Ford 351 or something in it. But don't let that fact distract you from the point that all those things led up to the Ultima GTR, which is an LMP or Daytona prototype style road-going supercar that has a Chevy small block V8 in it, backed by a Porsche transaxle. You can actually put a bunch of transaxles in it, but this is a Porsche transaxle. Anyway, my point here is just to state that this is the best package ever, and nothing bad could ever come from building something like this. Alright guys, so if you saw the last video, which was the first video that I posted about the Ultima GTR, then you saw that this thing has been sitting for 7 years and we got it running. The next thing that we have to do is get it running for an amount of time. So it didn't have any coolant in it at any point in that video. I've also finally found out just how much oil it holds because it doesn't have a dipstick. So we can top the fluids off, we can put some fuel in it, we'll get it heated up, and we'll take the next steps towards getting it on the road because there's a bunch of stuff we have to look at, which I will show you guys as we go along today. But first things first, if I run it right now, I am going to suffocate in the garage because it smokes a little bit. So I want to get it spun around so the exhaust is going out of the garage, but this is the first warm day of the year and all the snow is melting. So my driveway is just solid mud. So I think what we're going to try to do is this thing's sitting on casters, these cool, race car rolling stands. So pretty sure we're going to try to rotate it around. I'm not going to measure it because that would ruin the surprise. But I think if I just move some of the Land Cruiser parts and things, I can probably spin this thing around in here and have the exhaust pointed out the door. So forget will it start. To start off this video, we're going to do will it spin. Alright guys, so I'm under the back of the car just to start off with because I want to make sure these stands were in the right spots before I start, putting some force into it to rotate it. And I spotted this for the first time. Maybe you can read that. It says 750 pound capacity. This thing is light, but it is not that light. It's about 2,300 pounds all in, and I would say a disproportionate amount of that is probably on this rear stand as opposed to the front stand, but maybe not because it's mid-engine. But no matter how you do the math, there's got to be like 1,100 pounds in each of these stands. So I was laying under this thing, changing the oil and stuff, and I didn't even contemplate that. But fortunately, I too like to live dangerously. It was completely uneventful. It went really smoothly. I thought that would be a major pain in the ass, and it wasn't. Every once in a while something goes my way. Anyway, next we're gonna throw 2 quarts of oil in it because this is a 10-quart pan. I put 6 in before. I figure 8 is definitely safe if we're not ripping it around on the road. So I'm gonna throw 2 more quarts of oil in it. We're gonna put a bunch of gas in it, probably 5 gallons of gas or whatever. And then we're gonna top off the coolant, and then we're gonna wait for what I assume to be coolant leaks from everywhere, which just seems to be inevitable. Anytime I have a car that has no coolant, it's probably because it leaked all out somewhere else. So let's see what happens with that. All right, so we got oil in it, we got fuel in it, we got coolant in it, and the only leaks that I can tell is the one from where I way overfilled it and it just came out the filler. I guess it wasn't empty. I thought it was empty, but it wasn't, and it can't have been because I only put 2.5 gallons in it, and there's no way this thing only takes 2.5 gallons. I mean, the pipes going from the back to the front probably hold 2.5 gallons. So this thing must have been pretty full, and it was just, you know, down below the filler. But that's a good thing. So now all we have to do is hook up the jumper pack, fire this thing up, and see if it warms up correctly. So let's do it. Alright guys, so it seems to have come up to temperature no problem, although the gauge does not seem to be reading at all. Like it only came up to like 60 degrees. So that's problematic probably. But it's definitely hot because the fans, which work on a switch I found, were pulling hot air. So it was idling high though, so off camera I just lowered the idle and it sounds a whole lot better. So let me just fire it up again really quick, just so you guys can hear what it sounds like now. That sounds a whole lot better. Probably idling where it should be. Although the tach doesn't work anyway. So a lot of stuff to try to fix on this thing. Fortunately, oil pressure does work right there. So at least I know I have that. Now one problem area is that we definitely have a good amount of blow-by coming out of the breathers, which could be just because it needs to be driven. You know, rings stick and things like that. Cylinder walls get a little rusty and crap, so maybe once we drive it around, it'll stop doing that, but generally speaking, it runs pretty good. So probably what I'm gonna do now is go through the sensors and try to find out why some of that stuff isn't working. So we'll start doing some diagnostics on it, I guess. All right, guys, so stupid me, I totally forgot that it had this sweet little Edelbrock standalone fuel injection setup, so I don't even need the gauges. So I've got, let's see, temperature right there, 189. So I just ran it for a little while longer. It came right up to temperature, sounds good. I even have RPM on here too, and some fuel pressure stuff. So I just changed the target in this because when you're running fuel injection, obviously the wrong thing to do is to just adjust it at the throttle body. So you want to make those two things match. So I just adjusted the target RPM to like 800 to lower the idle. So we should be good to go now, but obviously still some diagnostics to work to find out why the gauges don't work very well. Obviously you want tack on the dash and stuff, so we'll move in that direction. So slight change of plans. I was planning on chasing down some of the wiring stuff right now, but I messed with it a little bit over the last couple days, and it's not as bad as I thought. I just kind of had to understand the switches. They're poorly labeled, so it didn't really make sense. Now it does now. It's not as bad as I thought. B, there was a couple blown fuses that I just replaced, and you know, some of the things are working now. And C, what I really want to do is drive this thing now that the weather's nice. And if I want to drive it, then the biggest hurdle is this shifter, which I think I pointed out in the first video. It's kind of wonky, or maybe not, because the Porsche had a similar system like this, solid linkage shifter, and most race cars that are you know, mid-engine or rear-engine have a solid linkage shifter like this. They don't really use cables. So theoretically it could work. This one just doesn't really well. So you see it comes out of the interior of the car. It comes out right there in front of the motor. It goes through a couple of Heim joints and U joints and makes this like hard turn right there. And then it comes back to the rear of the Porsche transaxle. Now, when I first looked at this, I thought, you know, since the transaxle is flipped over, how did they make this all work backwards? And then I realized it's the simplest solution ever. They just put a U-joint right here. So if they attach the shifter right to the shaft, then it would do all normal shifting. But since they put this U-joint in, it reverses everything, which is, I don't know, really simple, but it's kind of like an elegant solution. I don't know. It's about as basic as you could do the job, so it's kind of cool. So it's really, really stiff and hard to find gears right now. So we're going to go through, find neutral, figure out exactly what this thing's doing right now, and then figure out why that's so bad. I imagine I can get it out with some adjustment, hopefully, and get this thing so we can drive it around today a little bit. So let's move. Okay guys, so I think I got this. Neutral is right there. And then let me just get the shifter here. So that would be first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So I don't think it's like a misalignment issue that's causing the problem shifting or the difficulty shifting. I think it's just the movement of the shifter that's causing the problem. So I'm assuming it's, you know, the sliding action in the Heim joints. So we'll take a look at it from that standpoint. So I can get all the gears. It's just that you can't like it doesn't, you have to kind of force it in, like move it around a lot to get it in. And reverse is just impossible at this point. So I think it's because it causes a lot of movement. So we'll just go through the U-joints, heim joints, and you know, see if we have a blind spot anywhere. I could also probably move this angle in and take that big bend out of it, but I'm afraid that if I do that, the adjustment's going to be bad because, you know, it probably took a fair amount of work to actually get this thing to hit neutral in the right spot because it's not much movement to go into the first set and into the second set. So we'll start picking through the joints and see if we can make this work better. So it was kind of weird to film, so I didn't, but I basically just sprayed some WD-40 inside the heim joints or right on the heim joints, and now this thing works so much better. So I can pretty easily find first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And reverse is still a pain in the butt, but I think that's more the detent inside the transmission than it is anything else. They're often hard, so it's whatever for now. Now, one thing that is interesting is down here, where the shift shaft goes by the oil filter, it's really tight. So I just got a piece of cardboard here, and it fits back there, but it's pretty tight back there. So it doesn't really have much of a chance to move because it's in a heim right there, and you can't see it, I don't think, but it's in a heim in the front too. So it can only move forward and backward. It can't really go in and out at all, but I do still feel a little uncomfortable with that. So probably what I'll do is loosen up that heim and move this whole thing out a little bit and just get away from there. And then I'm probably going to have to adjust the length of the rod a little because then it's going to bind up through gears. But generally speaking, the problem is when you have a heim joint like that, they're really cool because they allow, you know, two sorts of movement. They allow rotation inside, and they allow, you know, rotation along the long axis. What we're asking to do is push in and out of it. And unless the rod and the joint are sized perfectly, which they probably aren't, then that's really tough to do. So I think what happened was this thing just got a little bit rusty and bound up in there and didn't want to move in and out. And obviously with this shifter, it's required to move in and out as well as rotate. Like there's the rotation axis right there. So what I'm going to do is just push it all the way one way, lube it up, pull it all the way the other way and lube it up. And I'll do that for each of the heim joints and we should be off to the races. So let's do that real quick. So that could not have possibly worked better. All I did was climb under the car, move the shifter one way, and then I just greased the entire portion of the shaft that is the right diameter to fit inside the heim joint. Moved it back and forth a little bit, did the front one, and it shifts awesome now. So I even did the one in here that holds the shifter, and because of that, now it goes into reverse no problem. So we got first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. So now we got everything working perfectly. So with that, I guess we could probably drive this thing out of the garage under its own power, but we're gonna spin it around again. I'm gonna put the rear tires back on it, and then we'll put it back on the ground, we'll fire it up, and we'll drive it around in the driveway a little bit. So we're almost there. All right, guys, so step 1, make it run, check. Step 2, make sure it drives, check. Step 3, take it out on the road. That's going to be the next thing. But before we do that, we have a fair amount of work to do. So a couple things I've noticed while I've been working on it. One, the front clamshell doesn't fit real well. You can see the gap is pretty good on this side. It lines up with the body right there pretty well. On the other side, that gap is pretty huge. You can see the stopper right there. It doesn't actually hit. And then down here, it doesn't line up at all. And that's a problem because at full lock, the wheel actually hits it. Now, fortunately, that's really, really easy to fix. Pick the front end up here and show you. Because this thing is just hinged on a heim joint. So all I have to do is loosen that up and bring it in a little bit and we'll be good to go. Now, also, it needs a new battery. That one's bad, and the one that came with it is bad. Past that, the passenger door does not latch. So I'm assuming, I've already tried adjusting this end, there's really nothing there to adjust. I'm probably gonna have to take the bar out and then Dremel the hole a little bit into a slot, push it up, put some silicone or epoxy or something under it and get it to latch that way. Also, the passenger seat, not mounted. Not that I mind, because I probably won't have a passenger at first, but I don't want it flopping around in there. Also, we have our 5-point harnesses under there we need to install on both sides. Also, the mufflers back here. So this whole assembly moves a lot. Granted, it is loose at that joint a little bit, so you see a little of that, but it moves a lot. And that is because it has these rubber isolators right here, which ties the whole thing together. It's actually really nice, but there should be tabs welded to the frame where you could bolt that to the tube chassis. So that'll be better off. Past that, I guess there's probably a couple other little things I'm going to find as I go along, but for now, that's all I really know of. So we're going to take care of all that stuff in the next episode on this thing, so that's all for today. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time on Ran When Parked.